Robert Bigelow, one of the things we spoke about in the first episode of the Bigelow podcast was about gatekeepers. And, you know, you've established some relationships with some of these gatekeepers, the companies, the corporations that have kept secrets related to UFOs, crashes, bodies, things of that sort. They've done what our government has asked them to do, and they've done it for 80 plus years. You believe that they should get a pass, that we should give a preemptive pardon of some sort, whatever crimes they've committed or lies that have been told in doing what the government asked them to do, that they should not have legal liability. Is that right?
Well, I think it's not that I have relationships
right
with any of these people. I think it's more simpler. It's simpler to me. It's more black and white in that the government has been a partner in all of this since day one. So I can't see how you can blame half of the equation for not disclosing something that other people think ought to be disclosed. It's a partnership, hand in hand, working hand in hand, and yet, and the other part of this is the salient value to me is how much benefit we can get from them. That's not from as opposed to an adversarial kind of posture. We should have one of thank you, of appreciation, of giving them acknowledgement that they've been doing a lot of work that they've had to carry burden-wise, the secrecy and concerns about different kinds of things, and they really need help. The companies need more money. They need more scientists involved, but they have to maintain their secrecy at all costs because we are in competition with China and Russia on the exact same thing. And they don't have the concerns about secrecy that we do in terms of they can implement any level of secrecy that they want. They're not a free society. We are a completely free society. No, we are a free society, maybe not completely, obviously. We have our boundaries as to freedom of speech, as what's proper, and we have to be responsible for what we do. And so in those other societies, they're not, and they don't have those handcuffs. And that was one of the things that Harry Reid was concerned about, is that we are at a serious disadvantage. So if we were to say, we're going about this all wrong in terms of the level of the amount of information that's disclosed, there needs to be obvious parameters on that. It needs to be a process, a step-by-step, partial process delivery. It needs to be truthful. And we need to find ways to engage one of the most important assets that this country has. It's the gatekeepers. And do it in a way that is really a great new era of partnership that has never existed for 80 years.
Do you know, or can you guess about the level of involvement of gatekeepers, some of these corporations, aerospace companies or whatever, in the recovery and reverse engineering operations? For example, do they go out to crash sites and gather this stuff up on their own, or do you know?
Even if I knew, George, I wouldn't say anything, but I don't know. You know, I'd be just speculating like anybody.
I guess when we're talking about sort of a preemptive pardon, it would depend on what they've done, right? I mean, in UFO world, you know the stories about witnesses being intimidated. They go back to Roswell, death threats. I can tell you now, currently, people who have stepped forward to be whistleblowers and share information get death threats. Their homes are broken into. Somebody will sneak in the middle of the night, rearrange stuff. They're unemployable. I don't know that anybody's ever been murdered over this, but I suppose, that might be an exception to a blanket pardon, or would you think it has to be a case-by-case kind of a thing?
I think it's the level of that is something the President of the United States ought to be addressing. And I think that it's not up to me. It's not for me to suggest anything, or I think it's a presidential initiative that needs to happen. I would say he needs to give a preemptive pardon, but it has to be on a case-by-case basis. It has to be on what exactly is it, because national secrets are not to be taken lightly. Yeah, that's not something that you can take lightly. Our adversaries benefit. They're the ones that really benefit. For the American public, it's just pure, simple, paltry entertainment is what it is. But from a national security standpoint, it's very, very serious.
There is a race for this technology, right? Us, the Russians, the Chinese. Are there other countries you think that have recovered materials that are trying to figure it out?
Well, if they're making breakthroughs and we're not, that's a very serious problem. If we've made more progress than they have, we can live with that, because we have, I think, a higher standard of ethics than as a whole than China and Russia do. That's just my opinion. I think we do. I think as a country, we have our standards, which we have to covet and really protect our ethics and our standards in our nation.
Let's say the U.S. government, something crashes in New Mexico. The U.S. government scoops it up. They want to take it somewhere where somebody with some expertise can try to reverse engineer it or figure it out. They give it to Company X. And Company X has had it all these years. They've tried to make progress. Maybe they have made progress. Would whatever they develop out of that technology belong to them, or does it belong to the American public, or does it somehow split among both? As a business guy, what would you think?
I think there are other examples of federal-private partnerships that are perfectly legal, and so I think it falls into that domain of a federal-private partnership, and that means there's joint ownership.
The idea of a blanket pardon or some sort of a pardon for a preemptive pardon for the gatekeepers, the corporations that have been involved in this, raised a lot of questions among our viewers. The first episode that came out, people wondered, what does Robert Bigelow think about whistleblowers? Because some brave people have stepped forward with bits and pieces of the story, things that they saw while they're working in classified programs, and they want to tell the world. President came out and said, you are hereby released from your non-disclosure agreement. But that isn't the same as saying you can speak publicly about what you saw, because they could still be prosecuted as a violation of their classification. What do you think about them? What should be done with them?
Well, George, I think what comes to my mind right away is precedent in terms of where do you stop. So it's a categorical issue. It's one thing to be talking about the UFO subject and what you've seen that you're willing to talk about, but you've signed some security oath about doing that and you want to violate that oath. Or you feel that oath is no longer binding because it had a termination period on it, but maybe there is no termination period. Now, shift to something that's entirely different that involves national security. And you have a person that's calling themselves a whistleblower on something that is classified secret about a new capability that a destroyer or battleship has, or a submarine more than likely has, it's very, very new. And yet that person is going to disclose that. Two very different situations, but the person might call themselves a whistleblower. And so the person that's in the second instance has prostituted himself or herself under the cloak of being a whistleblower, when in fact they're disclosing a national secret about a military application, and they turn into being a traitor. Or we're at war, and someone is disclosing something that is puts them in the category of a traitor. Then it is even far more serious, because then they may have caused people to die, or they have disclosed names of membership. And so, imagine all the names and private information of secret classified people that work in intel organizations. That would be disastrous. That person is an absolute traitor. There's no question about it. They're not a whistleblower. So it's a case-by-case, genre-by-genre kind of category thing. And I think in the UFO instance, which is what we're really talking about, is something that the President of the United States needs to address and decide what should be done.
There are very clear national security implications. There's no getting around it. The technology itself, if we could duplicate it, it'd be world-changing. If we could duplicate what they do, what we've documented that they do in the sky, whoever they are, wherever they're from. The Russians came to that conclusion a long time ago. We've talked about the Russian UFO programs. They've seen UFOs set off their missiles, or at least enter the launch control codes and fire them up ready to go. We've seen our missiles be shut down, and they're very clear national security implications. So the race for the technology is a very serious thing. And it makes sense that there is UFO espionage and UFO counterintelligence by governments. You've been on the receiving end of that. There were some spies, right?
Yeah.
In the early days of...
We had 3 Israeli spies in our aerospace company. We had 7 our telephones were bugged, including mine, in locked offices, and FBI was involved. And it was kind of funny because the FBI was trying to put locators under cars, and my security guys kept catching them. And the FBI was complaining to me that we can't locate these. We can't do what we're trying to do here because your men keep catching what we're trying to do. Your guys are pretty thorough. And I said, well, why don't you just let me handle it and I'll talk to my guys and we'll plant them for you. No, we don't want to do that. So we were told not to terminate these people. So I had to sequester these three guys in ways in which they were not working on something that was sensitive,
You think they were looking at Bigelow Aerospace and your inflatable habitats or UFO related research you're doing?
Of course
at the
they
ranch,
were.
or
Of course
both?
they were.
Yeah.
But after about a month and a half, I'd had enough of it. I said, I can't continue to do this. So I said, I have to terminate these people. And one of them had already been successful at another company before he came to us in causing some problems. And that's how the FBI knew about this guy. And then he had these other 2 people along with him that they didn't know about.
You ever get a hint that there were Russians or Chinese or any other foreign agents around the ranch? Because I know, back to Roswell, it was a nest of Russian spies at that time, and it made sense because we had our atomic bomber wing in Los Alamos. And
Well, nations spy on each other. I think the most proliferate, successful one is China. They're really good at it. Our patent office is a sieve. Nobody in their right mind patents anything unless it's fairly simple and it's not really, 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 really trick. Otherwise, it's going to be a trade secret, and you don't patent it because they know within minutes anything that's it goes through the patent office. What's there? What's been filed? And so they're not obligated to. Foreign nations are not obligated to behave in the same way about acknowledging our patents, American patents. You're going to have patents in every single country, and the laws, in protecting that preserving that asset are much different country by country by country. A lot of folks explained to me that the Chinese way of thinking is that anything that you create, they can copy as fair game. That you're silly and stupid if you know that something is a much better function, it has a much greater functionality to it, and you don't copy it. And you're a foreign country or whatever, and it'd be silly for you not to copy the thing. So they look at it as that some of our patent restrictions are silly in that kind of sense. We say it's private property. We believe in private enterprise. We believe in ownership of what you create and trying to kick the government out of your hair, out of your wallet the best you possibly can, and hanging on to your money. Other countries' philosophies are much different.
You deserve a lot of credit for taking the initiative to go to President Trump and telling him about UFOs. There's risk there that he'd say, you're crazy, get out of here. But you took it, you prepared a report for him, you presented it in a very sober and serious manner, And whether you take credit for it or not, within a matter of weeks after your meeting with him back in February, he started taking action on UFOs and releasing documents and videos. And he's reduced the stigma and the possibility that people could be prosecuted for sharing information. I mean, it's a really big deal. I guess the question is, by the way, the day that episode was released to the public and aired on KLAS and on Mystery Wire, Trump came to town. Mm-hmm. He was here that night. We ran it at 11 o'clock on our newscast thinking maybe he'll watch some local news while he's in town. And I was hoping he would call you the next day. He didn't call.
Yeah, he didn't call. No, phone didn't ring. So,
well, I hope you sent a link to the interview to the people you know as administration so they'll take a look at it and maybe he'll call down the road.
I don't bother them unless it's important.
Pretty important.
Yeah, but not quite.
How do you keep him on the straight and narrow and keep him informed on this topic when so many in his own government will try to thwart that? You've seen it. Well, we talked about it before with OSAP. Once the word was out that OSAP existed, the knives came out and people tried to cut the kneecaps off.
Yeah.
And we've seen the great work that Jay Stratton did at the UAP task force. They took all these cases, boiled them down to 144 really well-documented cases, and they said 143 of these are not explainable. They're real. They're real objects. And then UAP task force goes away, Arrow comes in, and Arrow explains it all away. Their job is counterintelligence and make this to go away, right?
Yeah.
Seems like it.
Yeah. And they're good at it. You have to clap and applaud. They're good at it, and they've been good at it for 80 years. Regardless of who's in charge, who's died, who's come and gone and retired and so on. It's really been consistent. And the same thing with the tipping point of the reveal about UAPs
from ODNI?
Doing exhibitions beyond the tipping point and not quite getting there. Because it's been audacious as to what they've been able to get away with without a confirmation or disclosure all these 8 decades. It's amazing they've been able to do that. It's like a cattle mutilation. There's never been a prosecution or anybody caught, right? It's the most successful crime that exists, right? Nobody's been caught. So after all these years, you have missile silos shut down. Other ones become active, hot. The missiles are hot. It's like they're scratching their heads and they're saying, what the hell do we have to do next in order to be recognized? We have everything going on, the crop circles and crowd mutilations, and Doug and Dave didn't do all the crop circles, obviously, and we know that firsthand as researchers. But it's like, wow, these human beings are really tough. We're having a hard time getting noticed.
Did you tell the president that you think they're ETs, or is that the assumption going in? They're aliens.
Oh, sure.
Alien to us. You think they're ETs?
Yeah, sure.
At least some of what we're interacting with are ETs.
Yeah, sure.
Did he have trouble with that? I'm asking this because I've seen other people who've said they've had these conversations, and President Trump has said basically the Fermi paradox. Okay, where are they? Did he say that? So where are they? Oh, you can't say what he told you, but that question has to come up.
Well, that is not an illogical that's not an illogical retort, because a person's done no research. The world is a completely different world, and they haven't gotten into the subject at all for whatever reasons. They've been totally preoccupied by other kinds of subjects. So they haven't given any thought to it. They don't know anything. It's like trying to, tell somebody about brain surgery and they know nothing about what to do, anything. So I don't fault anybody for saying, where are they? It's just that maybe they don't have a lot of imagination, much, or maybe it doesn't take that much. But in today's world, with the media, with what's on the television, all the different programming, boy, you have to really be in your own world and not to have some exposure to being at least really curious.
What's the evidence that they're ET? I'm asking in this context. Our mutual friend, a guy we both respect greatly, Dr. Jacques Vallée, I remember in the first interview I ever had with him in 1990, he said, look, these things, the technology that they've demonstrated, they can manipulate space-time in ways that we can't imagine. But if they can do what we think they can do, they could be ET. They could be interdimensionals. They could be time travelers. They could be something else more exotic. They could be all of the above. What makes you think that they're most likely ET?
Well, you have to define what is extraterrestrial. And I think that the extraterrestrial answer is that it's a big basket. It has a lot of potential. If you can manage and manipulate space-time, you can be time traveler. So, and that is how you can cross vast distances, that isn't normal in our physics. I think that doesn't mean that there aren't other, that a lot of people try to say, well, these are angels or demons, or there are other kinds of characterizations of what ET is. I think there's a sharing of the dimension of space-time. So there's a coexistence between other intelligences that aren't really thought of as the normal parochial ET, which we have evidence exists from abductees, for example, right, what they have seen on board, and they've seen a number of different varieties of intelligent beings on board.
There has been communication, right? Them to us, wherever they're from. And often these beings, at least according to abductees or experiencers, they say these beings conveyed to them telepathically, I guess, that they were from Zeta Reticuli or Sirius or something like that. I guess the question is, how do you trust them to tell you the truth? How would we know that they're being accurate and that's who they are? And you and I have had this conversation about the ranch, for example, attempts at communication at the ranch, which we'll dig into in great detail. How do you know who you're talking to at the ranch? And with mediums, how do you know who you're talking to?
So Eric Davis and Colin Kelleher were on the ranch, and everybody kind of knows about this particular event. And Colin is there. It's nighttime. It's maybe kind of there's ambient light, because Eric is drawn to something that's commingled in the tops of the very tall cottonwood trees. They were maybe 50 feet, 60 feet high. Colin is watching these balls of light bounce around near the little creek bed where the Russian olives are, on the grassy area of the ranch there, and so he's distracted, and Eric gets this telepathic communication. We see you. We are aware of you. Something to that event. The interesting thing to me isn't so much that. That's not so. That isn't what's interesting, that it occurred telepathically, or that they said that, and they are aware that that's going to be reported, what they said, because they knew why we were there. What's interesting is they didn't say, "We want you to leave immediately," or just flat, "Leave now. Leave this area now." That wasn't what was said.
Just they're watching.
And you only get that, don't come any closer as a cousin to "leave now," in the turquoise balls of energy. But also put a fear in you that you're going to die. And that fear is such a conscious impact that you have no doubt, people tell me, that you have no doubt that you will die.
So those orbs, those swirling liquid-looking glass orbs,
The
turquoise blue,
the turquoise ones.
somehow attached itself to the fear, fight or flight kind of a thing, and would drive people right to their knees. Right? It manipulated.
Yeah, you might have a microwave type of application that could do that to have an army lay all down on the ground, but what you're doing is messing with all of their motor mechanisms and disorientation and causing a colossal disorientation of where they are in that kind of, or pain maybe at the same time. This was different. This was something that knew exactly how to affect your brain. Or it might have been, and there's a difference between mind and brain. And in the subject of consciousness, they're not the same. You can be brain dead and still have a mind, still have a consciousness. And near-death experiencers experience that. So long as your brain has oxygen and, so long as blood is there. But so something is able to do that makes you absolutely believe it. Absolutely believe it. And so, they, it didn't say leave this area, leave now, leave this area. It just says, we're watching you.
There was an incident during the OSAP period where a couple of intelligence officers are walking into the middle homestead. Suddenly the temperature drops like 20, 25 degrees. It gets cold.
Yeah.
They see this real dark, like a black hole in front of them. And they got a message. They were froze. They froze. And their message was, don't come any closer. Something like that. Do you recall that?
I don't.
Okay. But there were other communications or attempts to communicate at the ranch. It was one of your primary goals. You conducted a number of different kinds of experiments to try to engage with them, correct?
I did. I did some very private ones. In that, it wasn't part of our menu of experiments that we had created different kinds of things to be acted upon, and but I wanted to do something a little bit more sophisticated, and I wanted to be able to change something in real time and be aware of it and not be there. And so I would be 500 miles away and I'd be able to act upon something with people photographing without being told. They were told where to point their cameras and when in real time by me. And then I would be able to see by asking them what do you see on the camera that you took photos, and what do you see that you just took a photo of? And they would describe it to me, and either I had been successful or I hadn't been successful.
You have something in mind, like a shape or something like that, and you're thinking it. They're on the other end taking pictures.
Right.
They don't know what the shape is that you have in mind, though.
Right.
Did it work?
It did. Yeah, in one series of experiments, I was successful 3 out of 3 times, and the 4th time I was only partially successful because I got cavalier. I got careless. I lost my sincerity because it was too easy, and I lost my sincerity, and I lost my my focus for a second or two, and it was only partially successful, and it was all my fault.
Do you want to give some details on that?
Not yet. No.
But I mean, throughout the time that NIDS and into OSAP, you were trying to communicate with whatever it was that was there. There were smaller experiments you did. It was fascinating. The ball and jacks thing. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, that was really great. And all these things are educational at multiple levels. When you have a demonstration, it's so neat that not just maybe one thing has happened. It's like, holy cow, 4 or 5 things all happened at once. And there's a menu here of different kinds of things that happen. The ball and jacks were an example of that. So one of our security guys, I won't name names, but Jean Dietz, she's since passed away, was our manager. Richard was kind of along for the ride. She was the main muscle and the fearless one. So we said, okay, let's set up this experiment on the kitchen table. And it's going to be a ball and jacks. And the ball's about the size of a golf ball. And the jacks are proportionally large. So they're not little miniature toys, but they're large enough. And they were all multicolored. And they were multicolored in pairs. And so when the experiment was set up, and we have before and after photographs, of course, we set it up where they set it up to where it was a ring, and the ball was in the center of the ring of the jacks. And it wasn't a neatly assembled ring or anything. They had just assembled a ring, and then they left the kitchen table area and went outside, just on the back door onto the deck. And then they came 30 seconds later. They came back in. There was no change. Nothing happened. So they go back out again, but this time they wait about a minute, and they come back, and everything has changed. Now it's a horseshoe. The ball is outside the horseshoe, several inches. The horseshoe is neatly shaped. All of the jacks are in color. All the colored jacks are paired in colors. The red with the red, the silver with the gold with the gold, and the green with the green, and so on. And so it was much better done, much more neat and carefully done. So our guy, jumps up and down and sees if he can do anything to bounce the table around, or with heavy jumping up and down right next to the table. There's no way, and they didn't hear anything. Right, they were just outside the door. They didn't go away 30, 50 feet. They were right alongside the door.
Was
outside.
he able to make it move?
No, nothing whatsoever.
There's nobody else there.
Nobody else there.
Yeah, it's the ranch. It's the middle of nowhere.
It was in the double wide trailer, and there was nobody else there, just them.
This was communication of a sort.
Well, yeah, it's fun because it is communication. You're playing a game, and a lot of this is about gaming. A lot of this is. It's not to cause harm. Most of the ET stuff isn't to cause harm. That's not the intent. Harm has been caused. People have acquired cancer from balls of light. They have caused, the the radiation effect of the craft has produced cancer. Harm has been, I don't think it's been a byproduct, but not intentional byproduct.
So it's being in proximity to the phenomena as opposed
With
to...
Calaris Island aside, that is a real anomaly. What happened in Brazil, Calaris Island, because that was all deliberate. Those people were hurt and harmed, and I think in a couple instances perhaps killed in that episode. Jacques Vallée investigated that personally. And
So did I.
Oh, and you did too.
I went down to Calaris 2 years ago.
So was your conclusion that it was intentional?
It was intentional. It seemed to be a sampling project, that these beams of light that were shot at them weren't laser beams to attack them. It was inside those beams of light was a filament that stuck in their skin and took blood samples and tissue.
I wasn't aware of that particular feature. I was aware that they caused marks, but I thought they were burn marks.
Yeah, they're kind of like a burn mark, but it was these prongs from these filaments that took up blood samples. And
so the filaments were removed back into the craft.
Yep.
They weren't left behind as something to analyze.
Yep.
That's a shame.
Back to the ranch. You did other experiments from the beginning to try to communicate. There were things like blocks, right? You were hoping that it would do something.
Sure.
But you still didn't know really what you were communicating with.
No, but you're establishing a rapport, right? You're establishing a rapport. And it might be that the same thing with a dog or a cat. You're establishing a embryonic relationship
So much of what happened at the ranch, the incidents, it was clearly confounding because it never happened the same. Whatever that intelligence is, it was allowing you to see these demonstrations, is what you call them.
Yeah.
It would allow you to see them, but they'd never happen the same again. It wouldn't be in the same spot.
Right.
They allowed you to see them, but not really document them. Right? I mean, you couldn't document it. It happened again in the same way at the same place.
So before we get into the camera thing,
Sure.
and you could say the exact same thing about cattle mutilations. They're all demonstrations. I can't imagine there are too many aliens walking around with boots with a cowhide that's colorful. Maybe they've watched our Western movies and they want a pair of those cowboy boots, and so they take down a cow or two. So nothing is harvested particularly, except you've had certain things cored out, and you've had high heat close the tissues like a laser effect, and eyeballs have been cored out the diameter of a pencil. And I understood one time there was a heart extracted, and the pericardium was intact. So, to me, these are all demonstrations.
Right.
And we had the calf thing, which was really interesting. Terry and his wife had seen that calf and its cow mother 30 minutes before they saw the mutilation of the calf. And what attracted them that something was wrong was from a distance they saw the cow walking around in circles and really agitated. So they drove over there and saw the cow's calf stretched out, all four legs, no blood, and it was all the tissue was missing, not just the blood, but a lot of tissue was missing from its ribs, and so there was a substantial difference in what the probable weight of the calf was before the mutilation and what the weight was after the mutilation. So a lot of mass and blood had been
It wasn't an animal that did this and ate 75 pounds of meat.
Well, we did the forensics on bones, and it was confusing. We had impact sites on the bones. On one particular bone, I think it was a rib bone. There was a cleavage impact, like an axe or a large knife or something sharp implement. On the same bone, there were tooth marks.
Teeth or instruments?
Both. There was an instrument, there was a cleavage cut. There was another cut that was from a fang or a tooth.
No tracks?
No tracks, no anything else. It was, again, the demonstration. I took it as a demonstration. First of all, how to extract a lot of blood from a cow like that, and there's nothing left on the ground. Or, the cow had been airborne because there are no tracks or anything around, and the ground isn't disturbed, or it looks like as though the cow's been dropped. So there's still snow underneath the animal.
Your team, your investigators, you had a professional tracker that came in, looked for animal tracks, vehicle tracks, human tracks, didn't find any of those. Your team sort of came to a conclusion that this calf had been taken somewhere else, carved up and brought back and dropped there. Is that right?
I don't recall that. Yes to the fellow who was worked for me in a different capacity, but he was a professional tracker and hunter. but he worked in a different capacity.
Your hitman, probably. You know.
Yeah, right. So we had the incidents of the animals in the tree, the eyes in the tree, and so on, that kind of thing, and footprints that kind of went nowhere. But I don't remember, as far as the calf situation, that the conclusion was it had been assaulted someplace else and mangled and mutilated someplace else and then put there. I don't remember that.
I think that was maybe Dr. Colin Kelleher's guess, is because the rancher and his wife were there. They were yards away. Sunday morning, bright. There was no one else out there. It's quiet. This thing happened, and there was no sound. So the guess was that it was taken somewhere, carved up, and brought back and dropped there. Because otherwise, the dogs, the rancher, his wife would have heard something going on or seen it.
So keep in mind, we're talking about something that can manipulate time and space. They can manipulate sound. So you could be in the cone of silence and not hear anything. It's possible that you can be isolated and you're completely unaware of anything outside of you. There are different ways that we can imagine things can happen. So I wouldn't conclude necessarily that it had been taken someplace else for that to happen.
30 years ago this month, 30 years ago, almost exactly at the time go ahead.
I'm sorry. Oh, never mind.
30 years ago this month, right now, as we're talking at the ranch, the rancher sees this blue turquoise orb lead his dogs out across the pasture in Homestead 1 and zapped them. And all he ever found of those dogs were these gooey puddles. Another demonstration. I just wonder, what is the message from that?
Terry showed me those. He showed me later. Showed me what the remnants of what was left of those dogs. And so I'm sorry. So the question.
So what's being communicated there? We could do this to you if we wanted to. We could carve up you instead of cattle, zap you instead of dogs.
It's not clear to me what was communicated. Because it's more of a human-animal reaction of, well, I'm going to get even, or I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt something you care about. Those are more human kind of reactions because we're a human animal.
So we're looking for a meaning as we would interpret it, as opposed to
I'm looking for a message. As a researcher, I'm looking for information for a message, as you know, of a demonstration. But that was a teal ball, as I recall, that they were chasing.
Yep.
The message might have been, the dogs were expendable, and the message might have been for Terry. And the message is, this needs to be taken really seriously. Or we, or me, or it, whatever that ball is, if it's a consciousness, not just that the locomotion is that it can dodge branches throughout a forest of trees with perfect precision. At speed, but it may have a consciousness connected to it. And it may have been the message was for Terry, not that the animals' lives weren't sacrificed for nothing. So they were sacrificed, maybe, and speculating as a message for Terry.
Well, it seems clearly whatever that intelligence is can differentiate between cows and dogs and people. What it did to cows are things that we do to cattle all the time.
Oh, yeah.
What it did to those dogs, I mean, it still is different from what it could do to humans. It did not.
Well, you have to take it seriously. I mean, so all of it is very serious, that whether it can cause human problems, which it has, or kind of innocuous kind of things that are just games, you know. So
On the last day of your ownership of the ranch, before the day before it switched over to Brandon Fugel, Colin Kelleher and I went up on your plane to the ranch, and he was going to pick some things up. I hadn't been there in a couple of years because during the OSAP program, I'm not part of it. I wasn't allowed to be there, but some of the things that we picked up looked like they'd been communication experiments. There were these wooden boxes with a glass top and some metal particles or something like that. Were those communication experiments as well, or do you recall what that was?
I didn't set all of them up.
Okay.
Other folks did that, so it was up to them how they were to arrange things. But one thing we might just touch on for a couple of minutes that we detoured a while ago is that the cameras incidents.
The cameras.
Yeah. So this is a good demonstration because it was in full sight. Something happened, you say, to that calf, and the speculation it had to be taken somewhere else. And this is a good example as to why it didn't have to be taken anywhere at all. You could have been standing 30 feet away and not seen anything happen, except all of a sudden that cow is spread out. Because that's what happened in full view of one camera looking at another camera, a couple hundred feet away.
You had cameras up on top of these telephone poles at the ranch, and they had wide views of the property, so you could try to see what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And
well, we so one camera's watching another camera, and I had bought the herd of cattle from Terry, and we didn't tell the cattle why they were there. They were just enjoying the grass and the water and the nice fall and
it's a beautiful
springtime.
Beautiful place, yeah.
But they were guinea pigs. And so as researchers, we needed to have something to research. And so there was a time when the cattle were in the vicinity of one of these telephone poles, and they had a camera at the top of the pole, maybe 25 feet, 30 feet high. And so we had a metal or a very strong, thick plastic conduit, or perhaps a piece of steel conduit, that the cable from the previous power source that powered the first telephone pole camera also ran underground to the second one. And then those cables were bound together with duct tape about 3 feet on center all the way up the pole. And then when they entered into the can of the camera, the weatherproof can, they were knotted inside that can. So they were secure. And the conduit was bent and ran up the side of the pole for about 15 inches. And there was a steel horseshoe clamp that kept that in place, hugging the pole. The pole was probably 8 or 9 inches in diameter. So, everything was time-stamped. So we saw that the camera the second camera became disabled, and there was no visual evidence of anything approaching the camera on the ground or in the air. The cows had moved a little bit nearer to the telephone pole. And there was only one thing that I could see that changed, is there was a slight breeze along a fence line, 70 feet away, beyond the pole. There was a slight breeze because a bush was slightly blowing in the breeze. At one point, it stopped. That breeze stopped. That was the only thing you could see. There was also a slight movement of a small cloud that appeared in the sky, not close to the pole, but up, substantially high. And that was it. Meanwhile, all of the conduit at the bottom had been pulled away from the pole. The steel horseshoe-shaped mechanism had been pulled apart, and all of the duct tape had been stripped out. And the duct tape, as I recall, was missing. And all the cables were peeled away from the pole. And I wouldn't say that 100% of the duct tape was pulled away, but enough of it was. There might have been the bottom couple of duct taped areas had been intact, but the camera was certainly disabled.
Disabled, shredded? How extensive?
Absolutely. So that was a message of, we don't want you to film. We really don't, we are private creatures, and we don't want you to film what we're doing.
You can be here. We don't mind you seeing us once in a while, but no more.
Yeah, so there's kind of rules, rules of behavior that take a long while to try to understand in trying to create a kind of a relationship, whatever that is.
Whatever did it was invisible, right? You have cameras you have a camera that's looking at the camera that was destroyed. Something ripped it up, tore all the protective stuff up, and did it. And is there anything that appeared on camera that you can see?
Spontaneous ones. So the rules are interesting. We can control you. You can't control us. We aren't going to repeat things twice. But we're going to give you some slack. We're going to let you figure out what you can do. So I would tell one of my security guys, I said, look, here's what I want you to do. I want you to have a camera at the ready when you're laying in bed and you're ready to go to sleep or whatever. And or even if it's broad daylight and maybe you're taking a nap, maybe you're working a graveyard shift, whatever. And so you're taking a nap and you're getting ready to sleep, and the blinds are down, the drapes are pulled on the windows, and in the bedroom, and so, but there's still ambient light, a little bit of it coming in, and you got a flash attachment on your camera, and these were digital cameras, and just not very big, and I said, when you feel the urge, you feel a sense, not that you sense that something or somebody's with you, they're not that strong, where their hair is standing up, or not that strong, but you just have, not maybe intuitive, maybe your intuition's talking to you, but go ahead and spontaneously take photos of any direction that you think you should. Do what you think you should do. Just do it. Don't question it. That's where you mess up. Just do it. And almost always he would catch things. And it would be really interesting what he would catch, because it would play on what the camera's capabilities were, not just what was in the photo. For example, in some cases, the photons wouldn't go beyond the edge of the bed. He'd be sitting up by the headboard area, and the photons would stop at the foot of the bed. But we know there's a dresser and a mirror on top of the anchor to the dresser, just a few feet beyond the bed, And other times he would get a photo of something lifting off of the nightstand. Well, that something had been there, and he's taking a photo, and in the split second that he's shot that photograph, whatever it was had already lifted off, because this is what's in the photo, is something lifting off about the size of your fist, is changing a shade from a darker color to maybe a slight gray color, and it's, the photo's not clear. Whatever it is moving so quickly or vibrating that it's not crystal clear. The nightstand is. Anything else is, but not what's lifting off, because it's quicker. It's the speed of it is something that the photo can't quite catch with clarity, and or you'd be missing a wedding ring, would wind up in some old pair of pants or slacks or something that he wore that was in a dresser drawer, but he wouldn't find that for a day or two. And it was his wedding ring on the, so he wouldn't find it. Or a gun's in the freezer, because they all carried. And so the gun's in the freezer. And, but so all these it's games. It's kind of games. And so that's the rapport that's probably one of the most possible, incredibly valuable kinds of things, in the communication process, which I'd like to segue since maybe we don't have a lot of time.
No, it's great.
Because Matt's been jumping down over here, up and down,
No, that's what we're talking about is communication. It communicates. I mean, you look at the history of UFOs. My theory is we see them only when they let us see them.
Yeah.
If they didn't let us, we wouldn't see them at all.
One thing in the rules is we're not in charge.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like rule number one. We're not in charge.
Right.
Okay, and that doesn't mean if you're in a jet and you're trying to shoot them and whatever, you're not going to make it. You're not going to succeed. So we're not in charge.
Do you think there's been direct communication them to our government or any other governments?
I don't know how there could not be. I can't imagine that there hasn't been, especially with gatekeepers. Especially with gatekeepers. And this gets into the communication actual process of trying to communicate, right? If you're going to go through confirmation and you're going to go through the process of disclosure, isn't communication a logical step here pretty soon? We've been doing it as amateurs at the Skinwalker Ranch or maybe from our homes or offices or different places, right? But anyway, so we get into, I have a number of things that are kind of like a first category.
Yeah.
The WHO should communicate, and we briefly touched on this before, but the WHO should communicate is important. It's really important. Who
should speak for humanity?
Exactly. So who should perform the communication speaking for the human species? What type of humans should not be trusted to communicate in this process? Is there a type of people that would the ETs may not prefer be engaged?
Lawyers. You'd pick lawyers, right?
Well, so I'm thinking of a cartoon where the kid's telling his daddy, well, I think I'm going to be a lawyer. He comes to him and the father says, oh my God, I'm not that, type of thing. But anyway, so would military leaders be of the right mindset? Would there be a hostility already embedded in that, which we have found in maybe some really sedate kind of ways is not a good idea?
To a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
I'll put it this way. How you think is really, really important. How you think about even our normal lives is really important. But how you think really matters in this particular context, not in just like, well, what goes around comes around, or some kind of karmic effect, which is real. That really matters. But how you think, not even what you do, much less what you do, but how you think, it really matters. Because that's the ignition part that starts things to become chaotic. So what type? Okay, you're talking military leaders. I did say lawyers, and I have a lot of lawyers that are good friends of mine. Anyway, politicians, okay, they have a different kind of agenda. Uninformed scientists, they don't know what they're doing. Well, you wouldn't hand something to a child and say, okay, run with this, that doesn't know what it's holding. The child doesn't really know what it is. So those are some potentially detrimental examples, and there are probably many others. So the WHO is really important.
Yeah.
The WHO. And would you leave it up to the United Nations to decide? I mean, what does the United Nations even do that is good, that is efficient and productive and competent? What is their image exactly? So it'd be impossible to have a unanimous agreement on anything out of that body. And so there are 5 nations that have absolute veto power. Any one of them can veto anything, right? So would you leave it up to the 5 nations that represent the world? And they can't agree much on anything. But the key here is also how would they quickly reach a unified agreement? If it's a group, how does a group reach is it the majority wins in the decision, or does it need to be 100% based on the seriousness of whatever? How would they reach a unified agreement on every question? And let's suppose the questions are answered, their responses. How long does it take for you to answer the response and answer it, and then even in a unified way? Can all people ever agree on anything? No, it's impossible. You can't get everybody to agree on anything. So is it like the majority wins or whatever? And what is the right or wrong answer? So all these things are really tricky stuff. Communication is a big friggin' deal.
How do you initiate it?
That's like Elon's first rocket, BFD.
Yeah.
Only that it wasn't friggin'. So anyway, those are really very tricky. And can we visualize that this process of communication is going to be durable? Can it be efficient for hours, days, weeks, months, or years? In the best scenario, it ought to never stop, providing it's helping mankind. Providing it's helping mankind, then it should never stop. But we have a worry. We may not be eligible.
We meaning Americans or we
Human
humans?
beings. Human beings, the big worry we have is that we lack the spiritual maturity to be able to be eligible.
Yeah, are we worth talking to?
Spiritual maturity, I like to put it in that kind of context because it's not whether or not we're knowing enough, we're intelligent enough. It's that our spiritual maturity may be bankrupt. It may be that we're substantially sufficient. We are insufficient in that area. So, because the delta between, as we said earlier, between our technological growth and our spiritual maturity is huge. They're never going to see an intersection. If those lines don't cross, we'll never be spiritually responsible for what we create technologically. We won't see that. We won't see that we're all in it just for the technology, and we're lethal to ourselves. We're very lethal.
Well, if they've been watching us for centuries, which it seems like they have, they've seen the primary occupation of our nation states has been war. We build bigger and more deadly weapon systems, and the biggest things that we marshal are for war. World War II being an example.
So there's a question. For 80 years at least, forget the historic going back hundreds or thousands of years. For 80 years at least, why haven't they given up?
Yeah.
We can see why they haven't given up when we were Neanderthals, early Cro-Magnon, at the time of Jesus, but going back to the Egyptian period and then working our way up to this point in time. But we have not matured for the best over the last 80 years. Why haven't they given up? Well, I mean, that question's a really important question. It's huge. And gosh, what if they did? What if they just decide to disappear?
These guys aren't worth the trouble.
That's that we don't know the why they disappeared. What if they just did? We have no more peculiar objects on our fireplace hearth any longer to see. We have nothing. There's nothing left on the doorstep that's unusual. Nothing that came from a neighbor, but came from something that no neighbor of ours could ever make, could ever create. And that's no longer on our porch. That's not on our front doorstep. I would not like to see that at all. That would be terrible.
Yeah, it'd be scary. I mean, if suddenly they were gone, we give up on the human race. We're leaving. That suggests something bad's coming, or they've given up believing that we are capable of rising to the point where we're worth communicating with.
Since there is we have free will. We have this free will to succeed or fail in anything. As individuals, if we don't put any effort into anything, if we haven't ever figured out what is our purpose in life, what is our meaning? Do we have a meaning? Do we have a purpose as we mature, as we evolve? What's our point? What And so we have free will to succeed or fail as a species. And so it isn't, I could see where it isn't up to ET. We could be expendable is the big worry to me, as far as ET is concerned. So they have made an overt effort. God knows, maybe a lot of people don't know, but the super collective consciousness is aware that there has been a significant effort over a long time for us to be made aware of there's something more. There's a lot more. But it hasn't changed us. And our free will is still, we are still rotating around the bottom. In our level of spirituality, whatever, we are a dangerous creature. So I could see E.T. giving up, just saying they have a right to free will. That exists universally. In this dimension and the other dimension, it's a universal freedom. Free will is. If you're irresponsible, eventually you'll pay for that harm one way or another. Eventually, for the consequence of those decisions. So eventually, that could be applicable to a huge percentage of the population at some time.
So much of the communication that's happened has been one-on-one. They encounter humans and convey information, sometimes under duress circumstances where humans are taken against their will and go on a ship. But the communication is always these alien editorials. They'll convey, hey, look, you're heading down the wrong path. You could quit messing around with atomic weapons and take care of your planet, quit poisoning the place. As if they're concerned about the planet maybe more than us. I'm glad that they go to that trouble to convey those messages.
I don't think the planet Gaia will survive. The Earth is stronger than we are.
Yeah.
It's going to survive. There are natural events that can cause tremendous destruction for long periods of time, and asteroids, supervolcanoes, thermonuclear saturation would be a devastation for a long time, but eventually there's recovery. Not for living things, but for the planet, the atmosphere and the radiation would eventually there's recovery. So Gaia is really durable.
The communication, as I said, that's happened that we know of, assuming that the witnesses are telling the truth and being accurate, is one-on-one. It's not mass communication. We've had some events like the ones that you presented to the president where thousands, tens of thousands of people have seen it. Even those are disputed. They could do a demonstration and communicate with a huge number of people all at once if they wanted to. They haven't chosen to do that, right?
Not something more proactive than just
a demonstration.
Just numerous things in flight that are anomalous. They're not birds. They're not asteroids because they're in your face. They're really close. So we get into the actual communication process of first of all, about how can we trust the ET communications. How do we know it's ET that's communicating? There's fraud in different kinds of ways in anomalous areas. There's fraud and the research tells us this and proves this in the spirit world on the other side. There's fraud in that. Okay. So, do we use AI to frame our questions and answers? If I gave term of a paper on AI, that was as to ultimately the biggest worry we have, which is bad, which is not good. As to, there were like 15 different steps. And we are at about level 9 right now, because it's learned to lie and it's learned to substitute language for us on our cell phones. And so rudimentary kinds of things. It can be seductive because of the good things it can do for us in medicine and do our thesis, our term papers or whatever, right? And make us look really good, So, but there are some serious consequences on the end game. But anyway, so if you abdicate that to AI, when does that stop? If it is the prime communicator, would you rather have human beings as a communicator, or do you want to really abdicate that to just AI? And it starts communicating as to the questions and answers and so forth, and at light speed, faster than we can. It's not going to take them hours or days or weeks or months. It's going to be instantaneous back and forth. So we've lost control of that. So anyway, so that's just a sidebar to consider, right? So then how do we enable a communication process in the first place? What are the techniques? We spoke about this earlier, that, it's not going to be a close encounter of the same third kind thing. It's not going to be a SETI thing. It's going to be something different. It's going to be a cousin to things that we've already talked about today, I feel.
It'd be an interesting experiment is to ask your listeners, what would they say? What would they want to say?
Sure.
What are the questions they'd want to ask? We could do a whole other episode
Well,
on
ideas are
communication.
worth, you always want ideas from as many sources as you can possibly get.
We've got a lot to cover on communication that we could do another episode on if you want. And
Well,
we could ask
I'm coming down.
Okay.
I'm coming down to where I can conclude pretty soon.
Okay.
Okay. So one of the interesting questions here, George, that's not maybe obvious: have the few humans who have already communicated with ETs currently and in the past peed in the pond? I put it this way: caused relationship damage. Okay. Forget what I said earlier. Caused relationship damage. So we don't know what has happened in various areas already. And it could be current. It could be in the past too, where there is relationship damage. That's an important thing to know.
We shoot at them. Humans shoot at them.
Well, how do we, and how do we fix it? How do we reacquire trust? How do we trust them, and how do they trust us? We can trust them because they have the power to have extinguished us anytime they wanted to. Any number of us, anybody, anywhere, anytime. It doesn't matter where. There's no place. It doesn't matter if it had been our astronauts on the moon, and certainly on Earth. There is no place we can go, no place to run or hide that is immune from their capabilities. So that means they have demonstrated in really good in a deluge of occurrences and events that they have earned trust. They have earned a high level of trust, at least for me personally.
Because they haven't wiped us out.
Yeah. Where we are like a wild card. We're all over the deck. We're so and then the other one is perhaps the human species is not even close to being ready to communicate on a regular basis, because of, again, we talked about our spiritual progress, and maybe we're not. Maybe And the worst thing I want to see is that they stop an effort. They disappear. To me, that's one of the worst things that can happen to us. So humans may need to grow in our thinking and elevate ourselves to start to be worth it, and we don't know. But because, and maybe that we are trying to elevate ourselves spiritually, and so that our culture as a species changes. Anthropomorphically, we're going to be the same being,
For a while. Yeah.
but our thinking has fundamentally changed. Like people who've had a near-death experience are never the same in their thinking. They are a different caliber of person, a much higher, elevated caliber of person.
Same for close encounter cases where people meet and communicate with aliens.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True. So the question is, are the others waiting for this? We don't know. And the others are potentially in charge of the engagement process, not us. So that's kind of like, but I think it is up to us though to make an effort. It's up to us to make effort, and it's not something that is for free without trouble. Most things good that are whether it's putting food on the table or whatever it is that you do in your life requires sincere effort and trouble, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And it's not free, and so it's that you have to put effort into anything that matters, and we need to do that. And so we need to start this process in different kinds of ways. Okay.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, communication would be important. We don't want them to leave. We don't want them to give up on us, whoever they are, wherever they're from. I mean, they haven't wiped us out. We don't know if they've ever intervened on our behalf. If North Korea launched the missiles, would they intervene and stop that from happening? We don't know, really.
Well, the free will is a powerful thing. And the first order is don't interfere. Do not interfere in a species' existence.
Star Trek Prime Directive.
For better or worse, that is their world. That is their existence. And they have to maybe learn the hardest of hard ways in annihilation of certain kinds of things in order to learn to change.
I want to come back to communication in a future episode.
But I'm not advocating. I don't want people to think that a solution is anything that hurts a human species. I'm not. There's no way. I'm talking about spiritual,
right?
A spiritual correction and change in our culture, not to cause harm to each other, or any other thing, if we can help it, that matters. Which is basically everything that we care about. And for survival, we have to do what we have to do for survival, to eat and live. But so I'm not going to extremes here. I'm saying that we need to fundamentally have a religion about us that supersedes what a lot of dogma that our religions, our churches pronounce, but that sometimes there are things that the churches say can relieve us of responsibility. I don't think that's correct. I think that's wrong. I think we are fundamentally always responsible for what we think and we do. And nobody can take that away from us. We are responsible for that. And that's part of our evidence as to whether we've progressed spiritually or not.
I think you might get some letters and comments on that, Robert.
Well, I'm sure I will.
Yeah.
I'm sure
that's okay.
We want to say that I'm anti-religion,
Right. No.
and I'm not at all.
We want some comments, in particular on this alien communication point. What would you like to say to them, and what would we like to hear back from them? What kind of questions would we ask them, or we'd like to hear answers to? People are welcome to send it to us, right? And we'll
So
take a look at
to
them.
end this, I want to say I am pro-religion because I think people have to have more than themselves to believe in, and I think there are so many aspects of a lot of religions that are good, And I personally believe in a supreme God force,
Right.
not because I belong to a particular religion or church. I believe it because I have seen, I know the proof. I feel I can prove it exists. I believe a super consciousness exists, and the word God is insufficient, is absolutely insufficient in the English language to describe the omnipotence, omniscience, and omniscience of this consciousness. Anyway.
Well, we're going to dive into that one for sure.
Yeah.
In multiple episodes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
All right. Good to see you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch us and listen to what we have to say. I want to thank George Knapp for being a terrific host. And we would appreciate any serious questions that you have that we may want to talk about. If you have questions, we would like to ask you to actually drop us a note. If you would mail these to the following address, 4640 Southeastern Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89119, Bigelow Podcast. Thank you.